Hey, you opened that fit in here. I mean, she's in there. Oh, she's in there. That is how this story ends. Not with a confession. Not with a dramatic chase. But with a police officer standing in a garage, staring into a plastic storage bin, realizing that the woman they had been looking for was never missing at all. She was right there. And the person telling everyone she was fine had been standing in front of them the entire time. January 2020. Roseville, Michigan. A house on Congress Street. Inside it lived 50-year-old Carol Rey, her 69-year-old mother Patricia Bennett, and Carol's young daughter. By the time police first stepped onto that property, they did not know they were walking into the aftermath of a killing that had been hidden for weeks. They thought they were handling a welfare concern. Patricia's grandson had asked them to check on her. That was all. A family worry. A routine knock on a door. The kind of call officers answer every day. At first, the house gave them exactly the kind of answer that makes a case seem small. Police department. Hi. Hi, how's it going? Are you Patricia? No, I'm her daughter, Carol. Carol was calm. Not defensive. Not panicking. Just ready. Ready with a story. Patricia, she said, was not there. She was with her sister. The reason the family was upset, Carol explained, was because her son John and Patricia were having problems over money. He owed Patricia a lot. He had been trying to call. Patricia did not want to deal with him. That was the picture Carol painted right there on the porch. A stubborn grandmother, a greedy grandson, a family argument, nothing more. And to the officers, at least at first, it made sense. It was messy, but ordinary. A woman annoyed with her grandson. A daughter passing along the message. No obvious signs of violence. No screaming. No shattered front door. No chaos. Just a woman saying her mother was elsewhere, and a family dispute was making everything look worse than it was. So police left that first contact without knowing how much danger was already hidden behind Carol's voice. Because what Carol did not know yet was that the family was not going to let this go. And what she could not stop was the one thing that cracks open so many hidden cases. Someone who keeps asking questions. Soon after that first visit, the pressure started growing. John was not satisfied. The messages he was receiving from Patricia did not feel like Patricia. The words were wrong. The tone was wrong. The rhythm was wrong. Something about them did not match the woman who had helped raise him. He was not just worried anymore. He was starting to feel that somebody was using Patricia's voice instead of hearing it. That is a chilling moment in any case. Not when someone goes silent, but when they seem to still be speaking, and the people who love them know it is not really them. So the next morning, around 11 a.m. on January 22nd, officers went back. Same house. Same concern. But now they wanted a real answer. Hi, are you Carol? Yes. Is Patricia here? No, she's not. She's getting her B12 shot or something like that. Now the story has changed. Patricia was no longer simply with her sister. Now she was at the doctor. Carol kept talking, trying to smooth out the edges. She said Patricia had been staying partly with her sister because Carol had pneumonia and had just come home from the hospital after a ruptured diverticulitis. She said Patricia had still been back at the house, had come by recently, had picked up medication and a change of clothes. She pointed out Patricia's things. Patricia's room. Patricia's washed clothes. Patricia's belongings. Everything was still there because Carol said Patricia was still basically living there. It was convincing enough to keep the officers from blowing the case open on the spot. But not enough to close it. Because one thing still had to happen before this whole matter could be put to bed. The officers had to actually see Patricia. That was it. One visual confirmation. One real sighting. One direct contact. And then the whole thing could end. So after leaving the house, Officer Pelt made the call that changed everything. He contacted the doctor's office where Carol said Patricia was being treated. The answer came back clean and immediate. Patricia Bennett was not there. Not only was she not there, she was not even supposed to be there that day. Her appointment was weeks away. Just like that, the center of Carol's story collapsed. Now, the welfare concern was no longer just a family misunderstanding. Now, the only person living with Patricia had been caught lying about where she was. And the shift was instant. Because when the family is worried, that is one thing. When the last person living with a missing woman starts lying about her location, that is something else entirely. From that moment on, the case stopped feeling routine. And the clock started moving in a different direction. Not toward comfort, toward something much worse. Once the doctor's office contradicted Carol's story, the case sharpened fast. Police went back to the family. And what they heard pushed everything further off balance. John was no longer speaking like an overreacting grandson caught in a money dispute. He was speaking like somebody who felt the ground shifting underneath the entire family. Patricia had been messaging people, yes, but the messages did not sound like her. A Facebook post said she was home, but when officers went there, she was not there. Texts were appearing almost immediately after police pulled away, as if someone inside the house knew exactly when the pressure rose and knew exactly how to push it back down. That was the part that started to frighten him. Not silence. Manipulated silence. My grandma just texted me, I guess. Okay, send the cops to my house again. My grandma's not at the house. That message hit hard because by then officers knew John had a point. If Patricia was supposedly texting from home while police were physically at the home, and Patricia was nowhere to be found, then someone was not just lying. Someone was actively managing the lie. Police spoke with John in more detail. Then with Carol's ex-husband, TJ. And this is where the case got heavier. John said he had not physically seen Patricia since around Halloween or early November. He had gone out of state, come back for Thanksgiving, then Christmas, and still had not seen her. He had begged to hear her voice. He had warned that if he did not hear from her, he would ask for a welfare check. He said the texts coming from Patricia's phone did not sound like Patricia at all. TJ added something equally important. He had received a strange message supposedly from Patricia explaining that she was holding up Carol because she was signing over cars, a house, and insurance matters. That message did not sound right to him either. It felt like someone trying too hard to make a disappearing woman still sound administratively busy. Then another part of Carol's story exploded. Remember how she said Patricia was with her sister? John checked. The sister had not seen Patricia in years. Now the lies were stacking on top of each other. Patricia is with her sister. No. Patricia is at the doctor. No. Patricia is home. No. Patricia is texting. Maybe. But not like herself. Then came the accusation that changed the emotional temperature of the case. John openly told police that he feared his own mother, Carol, may have harmed Patricia. That is not something people say lightly. He spoke about money. About Patricia helping the family financially. About concerns that Carol could be stealing from her or using her income. About fear that Patricia might already be dead and that Carol was covering it up. To an outsider, it sounded drastic. To officers, at that stage, it still sounded unproven. But the pattern was building. Nobody had seen Patricia. Nobody had heard her real voice. The messages did not feel authentic. The whereabouts kept changing. And the one person at the center of all of it could not keep the story straight. That was enough to move the case into a more serious phase. Police returned to Carol's house for a third time. This time, they were not there to absorb another excuse and leave. They were there to confront the fact that nothing added up anymore. Hi again. Hi. Is she here now? No, she's up at the Weber Cancer Institute, getting her B12 shot. Again, another version. Again, another location. Again, another explanation. The officers pressed harder this time. They brought up the earlier doctor's office lie. They asked direct questions. How did Patricia get there? Who drove her? Why could no one reach her? Why did every route lead nowhere? Carol kept adjusting, trying to smooth contradictions as they emerged. She said a sister drove Patricia, then said she did not really talk to her aunt or uncle. She said Patricia was here, then not here, then on her way back, then just called, then might be at the Cancer Institute, then might contact John herself. Every answer moved the moment it was touched. And that was the point. The officers did not need a dramatic confession to know what they were hearing. They needed only to hear one story fall apart in real time. When they asked Carol to call Patricia while they stood there, everything changed in Carol's body language. She became softer, more cautious, more deliberate. The easy deflection started to disappear. The officers could feel it. So they pushed. Why can't your mother speak directly to John? Why won't she answer? Why does every person who supposedly knows where she is vanish the second police ask to verify it? By then, the officers were not dancing around it. They told Carol what she needed to hear. Your story is not adding up. Something is wrong. Where is she? Still, Carol did not break. Not yet. But she was close enough that detectives could feel the edge of it. And that is where the case became a contest between what police knew and what they could legally prove. By the time detectives officially stepped in, the tone of the case had changed completely. This was no longer a family dispute wrapped in confusion. It was a missing person investigation with a daughter who kept lying. And when detectives sat with Carol, they made that clear almost immediately. They did not have Patricia. They did not have a confirmed crime scene. They did not have a body. But they did have too many contradictions. And they had enough experience to know when someone was standing in front of them trying to hold a story together with fear and improvisation. Detective Gary arrived and started pushing for consent to search the house. The pitch was simple. If Patricia was truly missing, then the search could help find something pointing to where she went, who she went with, or what had happened. Carol would let them see rooms, Patricia's belongings, her bedroom, clothes, laundry. But when it came time to sign consent, Carol pulled back. That hesitation mattered. Because every minute she spent trying to appear cooperative without actually opening everything up made the case look worse. The detective walked her through the logic piece by piece. Patricia did not pack a bag. No toothbrush. No clothes for staying away overnight. No normal preparation for spending days elsewhere. Patricia had medical issues. COPD. A stroke history. Other serious health concerns. Someone in that condition does not just disappear cleanly without contact, without supplies, without leaving a reliable trail. And then came the line that finally stripped the conversation bare. I'm more concerned for your mom than you are. That was where the mask started slipping. Carol said she was concerned, but the detective could see the gap between what she said and what she showed. If your mother is truly missing, you search. You worry. You push. You do not stand in a doorway reshuffling excuses. At that point, police told her directly they believed something had happened to Patricia. They said they were trained investigators. They knew when something was off. And something was off. Still, Carol insisted she did not know where her mother was. Still, she pointed to Patricia's things in the house. Still, she tried to use the existence of Patricia's clothes, hairbrush, and room as proof that Patricia must be fine. But that was never proof of life. It was only proof that Patricia had once lived there. And Carol could not turn that into anything more. Then detectives took an even harder line. They confronted the possibility directly. If Patricia had died of natural causes in the house and Carol panicked, they said, That was something they could work through. If there was some accident, if there was some death that Carol had hidden because of fear or money, if Patricia was somewhere in the house or the garage, now was the time to say it. That offer matters, because it shows how strongly police already suspected Patricia was dead before they had found her. And it shows something else too. Carol still would not move. She denied it. Denied it even as every lie around her kept collapsing. At that point, detectives had a problem. They knew she was lying. They believed she was hiding Patricia's whereabouts. But without stronger evidence or consent, they could not just rip the whole property apart on instinct. That is when they looked for another path. And they found one in Carol's boyfriend, Ricky. Ricky had been living at the house. That meant he had legal authority over shared areas of the property. If he gave consent to search, police could lawfully look through much more of the home and surrounding spaces, even with Carol objecting. So they brought Ricky in. When was the last time you saw Patricia? Probably about a month. His answers came easier, more directly. He said Carol had told him Patricia was at her sister's house. He admitted Carol had lied to him before, that she cheated on him, that she was manipulative, that he had been caught in her webs before, but he did not come across like a man helping cover a murder. He came across like a man who may have been living in the orbit of someone unstable without fully knowing how dark that orbit had become. So officers used Ricky's consent. They started the search. Backyard first. Cars. Outside areas. Nothing. Then the garage. The last place left. The place is still ordinary enough at a glance to be ignored. The place that had been sitting there the whole time, like part of the house's routine background. And once they opened it up, everything changed. The garage did not look like the climax of a murder case at first. It looked like a garage. Storage. Clutter. The kind of space families pile with things they do not want in the house. That was the power of it. A place ordinary enough to disappear into. Deputies moved through it carefully. They were no longer casually looking around. Now they were searching. Actively. Methodically. And then someone saw the large plastic storage bin. A container big enough to matter. Big enough to draw attention. One officer started looking closer. Hey, you open that? She should fit in here. I mean, she's in there. Then another voice. Oh, she's in there. In that instant, the case snapped open. Inside the bin were bloody towels. A smell so strong it no longer left any room for confusion. Black certainty. One deputy reported that it stank like a dead body. Another looked closer and saw enough to know what they were dealing with. A body. Right there. In the garage. Patricia Bennett had not gone to a doctor. She had not gone to her sisters. She had not stepped away from the family because of a financial dispute. She had not chosen silence. She had been dead the entire time police were being told she was elsewhere. And even worse, she had been hidden on the same property officers had already visited. What hit investigators next was almost as disturbing as the discovery itself. The body still was not fully dry. There was moisture on the top. The concealment did not look ancient. It looked recent enough to suggest movement, maintenance, or at the very least a body hidden for a period consistent with what John had feared. The lie had not just held. It had been actively maintained. The police moved fast. Search warrant. Secure the scene. Bring Carol in. Detain Ricky too until they knew exactly what he did or did not know. At that moment, the officers had every reason to question whether Ricky could have been involved. He had been living there. The body had been in the garage. A reasonable question existed. How could he not know? But first, they dealt with Carol. Go ahead and stand up for me. Put your hands behind your back. I think you know where we're going. That was the end of the performance at the house. No more soft explanations. No more pretending Patricia might walk through the door any minute. The hidden truth had finally been pulled into daylight. And from there, the case entered its next phase. Not proving whether Carol had done something wrong, but figuring out why she did it, how she did it, and whether she did it alone. Later, in court and in charging decisions, the outline became clear. Carol Rey was charged with first-degree murder, felony firearm, and larceny of $20,000 or more. Investigators had also uncovered bank activity and evidence that Patricia's phone had been used to message family after her death, helping make it appear she was still alive. That money angle matters here. Not because it explains everything, but because it gives shape to the cover-up. If Patricia was dead and her identity was still being used, then the lies were not random. They were functional. They were buying time. They were protecting access. They were holding the illusion together for as long as possible. And at the center of all of it was the same terrible fact. Patricia Bennett had been hidden in a plastic storage bin in the garage of her own home. Not miles away. Not in some remote dumping ground. At home. That changes the emotional architecture of the whole case. Because concealment that close is not panic alone. It is controlled. It is someone believing they can manage the scene, manage the timeline, and manage everyone asking questions. For weeks, that had worked. Until John would not stop asking. Until the police kept coming back. Until the garage door finally opened onto the truth. Now all that remained was to see how long Carol could hold on to her story. When detectives finally sat Carol down in an interrogation room, they were not trying to figure out whether she had done it. They already had Patricia's body in the garage. What they wanted now was motive. Method. And one answer above all. Did Ricky know? Because if Carol had hidden her mother in that house for weeks, and Ricky had been living there, detectives needed to know whether they were looking at one killer or two people managing the aftermath. Carol's first interrogation started with a familiar approach. Give her room. Let her explain. Let her tell a version if she wants to. Sometimes suspects reveal more when they think they are being invited to shape the story. That is what detectives were hoping for. And Carol did give them a version. It just was not a good one. She said that one night, sometime between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., she heard loud banging, like someone breaking glass or forcing entry. Her daughter was asleep. Carol said Patricia had been sleeping on the couch. She claimed she moved down the hallway with a gun, finger on the trigger, tripped, and the gun went off. She said she then found Patricia wounded, heard gurgling, screamed for her mother, and realized what had happened. That was the story she chose. An accident. A chaotic, split-second, tragic mistake. But the problem with accidental killing stories is that they have to survive contact with physical evidence. And this one did not. Even before detectives confronted her with the forensic details, something felt wrong in the way she told it. She cried, yes, but the emotion and the structure did not fit each other. She could form the timeline too neatly. She could walk through it too steadily. She did not sound like someone trying to remember a burst of terror. She sounded like someone reciting a sequence she had already arranged in her mind. So detectives let her talk. Then they came back the next day with sharper tools. They walked her through her own account again. You heard a noise. You tripped. The gun went off. Your mother fell. Fine. Now explain what came next. How did Patricia get from the house to the garage? How did Carol physically move her alone? That was one of the biggest pressure points in the entire interrogation phase. Detectives did not believe Carol could have done that part by herself. And they kept circling Ricky because of it. Was he there? Did he come over? Did he help? Was she afraid to name him? Carol gave little. Very little. Long silences. Half answers. Nothing that truly opened the door. Then detectives used the piece of evidence that blew apart the accident version. The autopsy had found puncture wounds in Patricia's neck. Fresh puncture wounds. Not old injuries. Not a random, unrelated condition. In other words, Patricia had not simply been shot in some sudden, accidental firing and then hidden. There was evidence of additional violence. That is a devastating moment in an interrogation because it does more than challenge the suspect's story. It destroys the moral shelter of the story. An accidental shooting can sound tragic. A shooting followed by puncture wounds to the neck sounds deliberate, intimate, and cruel. Carol had never mentioned that. Not once. And when detectives put it in front of her, she had no real answer. Did you stab her? Did something happen after the shot? Did you think she was still alive? Did you want to make sure? Carol denied it. Flatly. But by that point, denial was not doing what it had done earlier in the case. Because earlier, denial had lived in empty space. Now it lived beside a body, a concealed bin, bloody towels, a fake trail of texts, and physical evidence that her accident story could not explain. Still, she would not fully break. Not on motive. Not in the full sequence. Not Ricky. So detectives pivoted. If Carol was not going to give them Ricky, they would go to Ricky directly. And that interview changed the shape of the case in a different way. Ricky was calmer. Open. Not defensive in the way guilty people usually are when they know the center of the accusation is true. He admitted staying at the house nearly every day. He admitted Carol lied. He admitted she manipulated people. He admitted she had cheated on him and used him emotionally. He admitted he had gotten tangled in her messes before. But when detectives hit him with the core fact, Patricia is dead, and she was found in a tote in the garage, his reaction did not read like a man caught in an accomplice role. It read like a man blindsided by the full horror of what he had been living around. He answered questions. He stayed available. He did not harden. And the more detectives pressed him, the less he looked like a co-killer, and the more he looked like someone who had been near the crime without understanding its true depth. That does not make the scene less horrifying. In some ways, it makes it worse. Because it means Carol may really have carried the lie alone for that long, in a house with other people moving through it, without letting the full truth surface. Eventually, detectives moved away from Ricky as an active suspect. The focus narrowed back onto Carol. And by the end of that narrowing, the case looked like this. Patricia Bennett had been killed in November. Her body had been hidden for roughly 2 months. Texts and messages were sent from her phone to make her appear alive. Money activity continued after her death. Her family was lied to. Police were lied to. And the daughter at the center of all of it still would not tell the whole truth. In the end, this case did not need one perfect confession to explain what happened. It had something stronger. A chain. A daughter living with her mother. A grandmother who suddenly stopped being seen. A grandson who knew the messages were wrong. A welfare check. Then another. Then another. A lie about a sister. A lie about a doctor. A lie about a B12 shot. A lie about where Patricia had been. A lie about why no one could hear her voice. A body hidden in a tote in the garage. Money moving. Phones still sending messages. An accident story that collapsed the second the evidence touched it. That is what prosecutors were left with. Not one dramatic piece, but a structure. And every part of that structure pointed the same way. That is what makes this case so disturbing. Not just the killing, not just the concealment, but the ordinariness layered over it. Calls were made. Excuses were given. Birthday plans were discussed. Cars and insurance and money were discussed. Police stood in the house and were shown Patricia's room. Her clothes. Her things. All while Patricia herself was already dead. That is the cruelty of this story. It is not just that Patricia Bennett was killed. It is that her life was made to continue artificially, as a cover. Her phone kept speaking. Her possessions kept standing in for her. Her absence was dressed up as a choice. And the people who loved her had to fight their way through that illusion, one contradiction at a time. John kept calling. He kept pushing. He kept saying something was wrong. He was right. Without that pressure, it is very possible the concealment lasts longer. The money moves longer. The fake messages continue longer. The lie survives longer. Instead, the lie cracked. And once it cracked, everything that once seemed small started locking into place. The evasive answers. The changing locations. The wrong wording in the texts. The doctor's office contradiction. The sister who had not seen Patricia in years. The absence of a bag. The medical vulnerability. The tension in Carol's body language when she was asked to make a real call. Then the garage. Then the tote. Then the body. And once that happened, the story changed forever. Patricia Bennett was no longer a woman who had stepped away from family drama. She was a victim. And Carol Rey was no longer the daughter caught in the middle of a misunderstanding. She became the woman accused of making sure Patricia could no longer speak for herself. By the time the case entered court, the mystery had ended. What remained was the legal fight. The charges were severe. First-degree murder. Felony firearm. Larceny over $20,000. Ricky was released without charges. Carol faced the full weight of a homicide case built not on rumor, but on the body, the concealment, the lies, the financial trail, and the false voice that tried to keep Patricia alive just long enough for the cover story to hold. And that is the final horror here. Patricia was not hidden far away, not erased from the earth in some distant place. She was hidden at home, at the same house where police knocked, at the same property where stories were told, at the same place where ordinary life pretended to continue above extraordinary violence. Home is supposed to be the place that protects you. In this case, it became the place that hid the truth. And the truth only came out because someone refused to stop asking where Patricia Bennett was. Thank you for watching this episode of Silent Evidence, True Crime Exposed. If you found this story compelling, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Join us next time as we explore another chilling true crime case. Stay safe and take care.